Hello, welcome to Portal's Portfolio Series, where we will be having readings and interviews with student writers and published authors from Vancouver Island University and around the country. We will talk with them about what it takes to be a writer in the ever-changing world of publishing. Today we have another special guest, Jade Vandergrift. Thank you for being here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm a fourth year student at VIU, hopefully graduating this December. I'm a major in creative writing and I'm doing a minor in Spanish. And yeah, I've been writing for the NAV the couple last years, and I'm an intern at Edible Vancouver Island magazine. I'm hoping to continue to pursue publishing in hopefully some sort of food related magazine style thing, but I don't know. Everything is kind of open for next year.
Very cool. That actually brings up a question I have for you. How do you feel about the countless recipe websites with these long, arduous introductions about how they've done so and so, met so and so, and then a 20-minute recipe for banana bread or something?
I feel like they are a community all their own. They probably all appreciate reading each other's. I think that if you are a writer who writes like that for just a recipe, I think that you would appreciate reading someone else's recipe blog as well, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a recipe site. I'm shocked at the amount of people who have like these recipe blogs. It blows me away. I don't think I've ever gone to the same site twice, and I look at a lot of recipes.
Yeah, it's something, that's for sure.
Yeah, I took a picture the other day on my phone as I was scrolling through a website, and it was like there was an ad at the top, there's a video starting, and then there's like all the items to share, like Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter on the side. I was like, I can't even see the directions. I'm like scrolling on like a finger width of space on here. It was insane.
So, to be clear, that's not the direction you're hoping to go.
No.
Well, I appreciate the optimism you have for that community. It is fascinating, that's for sure. So let's get to it, I suppose. Would you say that you come from a literary background?
Hmm. No.
No. So
No.
where did it come from? Where did it begin, or when, I should say?
That is such a good question. I don't know. I guess I always liked reading as a kid. Um, and as far as like getting into actual like reading and writing as an adult, I think that my younger brother actually really inspired me, I would say, because he started taking um fiction writing courses at a college in the Okanagan. And he just talked about how much he enjoyed doing it as kind of like a side thing. And so when I started at VIU, I was not at all intending on doing creative writing. I was going to do journalism and global studies, and that quickly changed after about a year, into like a total shift into creative writing and Spanish. And I think it kind of, I started taking the courses as like an outlet, and then I realized how much I actually enjoyed writing and reading other people's things as well, and just like the vulnerability of the students that are in the creative writing program.
So, are you an English primary speaker? Do you have any other languages under your belt aside from learning Spanish?
Nope. So English would be my first language, and I would say I'm close to fluent in Spanish, conversational on topics
Okay.
that I choose.
Fair enough. Is writing in Spanish something that you hope to pursue?
Oh man, I don't think I could ever do it. I don't know if I'd ever have the confidence. I love translating though. This semester I'm taking a Spanish literature course, and we're reading like some stuff from the 19th and 20th century in Spanish, and it's so interesting. I would love to do translation to
Very
English.
cool.
Mhm.
Growing up, what kind of things did you read? What was your favorite genre or author?
Um, I mean, I loved like the C.S. Lewis books and Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. I was a huge still am like a huge Lord of the Rings nerd. I loved those books. I read those like over and over. So I guess yeah, much more into fiction, but I find myself now like I am like drowning in memoirs.
Mm. When it comes to your writing, I noticed in the Portal Magazine, you're writing nonfiction. Is that mainly what you're writing? Is that where your love for memoirs is coming from?
I think so. I took a class with Susan Juby, a memoir class it was just very interesting to kind of learn to write your story in a way that is like not every single detail that happened, but the things that are important and getting like a message across to readers. And I just love reading memoirs. I always thought that memoirs were like biographies in someone's entire life. I didn't realize that like memoirs were just like a snippet of things. And I am enjoying those so much. And I feel like I feel like I'm not old enough yet to really write a memoir, but then there are people who are younger than me who write memoirs. So I don't know.
You say when you speak about taking selected moments that are important to try and convey a message or a theme or a story, um, do you feel that there is a bit of a gray area there where a story can be twisted to convey a message that may not necessarily be accurate to a life that has happened?
I think that people can definitely lie in their memoirs. It's like, um, because a memoir is a story, like for me, it's a story that's true to the experience that I had. So I, for sure, am going to remember something that happened differently than someone else who was there. So a lot of things that you see in memoirs in the beginning anyway is like a disclaimer, like this is the way that I remembered it. Other people are going to remember it differently. Um, I'm trying to remember something that I was reading recently about someone who like she remembered she was like giving the account of how she remembered something and then would get educatory. So she would give an account of something that she remembered and then she was talking to her brother about how he remembered that incident or that moment, and it was totally different. So she has both of them in there,
Hmm.
which she is not exactly entitled to even do, right? Like it's her memoir, she can choose to just tell her side of the story.
Right.
So I guess like if someone is actively like knowingly lying in a memoir, I would say that is not cool and not exactly okay. But I think that people remember things a certain way, and other people who were in that moment, they're going to remember it differently, and they might read that and say that's not what happened. Um, but it's not their story.
Hmm. I like that. Speaking of stories, would you care to read us some of your publication or something else that you've selected for us?
Um, yeah, I'll read a bit, or I think I have time to read all of Clear as Mud. It's like 2.5 pages. That's my nonfiction, and I feel like if we're talking about nonfiction, we can read that one. And the fiction piece that I had published last year is a lot of voices, and I feel like with reading fiction, it feels weird doing that. So yeah, this is Clear as Mud, published last year. My first nonfiction piece. 3 hours hopping taxis and buses from Malaga to Algeciras, a long ferry from there to Tangier, and now a train to Fez, and all I could think about was skin. Mine was bathed in Sprite and sweat. The train was rickety and hot, even with all the windows open, and the sticky compartment grew more claustrophobic with each grind of the gears. Esther and I sat with our knees pushed against the back of the seat in front of us. Families crowded on and off the carriage, babies slept on laps, and girls giggled across tables. Between dusty plains and abandoned towns, people got off at remote stations and walked off into the distance. I'd been traveling in the south of Spain when I met Esther, Swedish, studying Arabic, and 21. We hit it off from day one. But after 2 months in the coastal city of Malaga, we were ready to hop across the Strait of Gibraltar to Morocco. We reached out to the language center in Fez to find a host family to billet us for a week-long visit. We were set to leave on October 24th. Esther liked to use every opportunity to practice Arabic, so she waited in line to buy our tickets, fidgeting with pockets on her long cardigan and quietly rehearsing key phrases. In Spain, we wore shorts and crop tops, but we knew long sleeves and loose pants were more appropriate Moroccan attire. I wandered over to a vending machine to get a cold drink, and when I turned around, Esther was right behind me, tickets in hand. It leaves soon, I think. We should find our deck, she said. I twisted open the bottle of pop and it sprayed both of us. Good thing I brought 2 shirts, she said. Good thing you told me I should only bring 2 shirts, I said, and Esther grinned. I followed her out the doors to the train platform. It was going to be a 3-hour ride. Do you think we'll get there on time? She asked. I shrugged. I don't even know what day it is anymore. I'd fallen asleep to the sound of the rails and woken up twice during the 6-hour marathon, so the sun was dipping below the Medina when we arrived in Fez and spotted a lanky Moroccan man leaning against an 80s-era taxi. He held up a sign with our names on it. Esther introduced us in Arabic. He smiled and nodded and loaded our backpacks into the trunk while we slid into the back seat. The streets were a maze that narrowed as we ventured deeper into the city. They all seemed to be one way. That is, whatever way a car happened to be going. Twice we came head to head with another car, and our driver had to back out until the road was wide enough to pass. The drivers flashed headlights to determine whose turn it was to advance. Our host family was multilingual and generous in the extreme. Both parents spoke Arabic, their daughter spoke Arabic, French, and some English, and their son spoke Arabic, French, and some Spanish. We communicated with facial expressions, hands, arms, and whatever language came to us first. We talked mostly with the daughter, Amira, and her mother, Umi. Misunderstandings and long-winded attempts to tell simple stories usually devolved into laughter. On the first night, they gave us a quick tour of their cozy apartment. There was a thick curtain pushed to one side of a large window where streetlights illuminated an ornate red rug that covered the living room floor. The walls were lined with stiff built-in couches with a similar design. The only other pieces of furniture were a boxy TV on a rolling stand and a round table they pulled into a corner where the couches met for meals of steaming couscous and lamb and carrots piled high in a tagine. There was an arched doorway that led to a room with one long rug and a Quran on a small table, their prayer room. Our bedroom had 2 tall single beds that required a step stool to climb into. Both were layered with heavy, flowery blankets to keep out the brisk October night. Out of courtesy, we waited for the rest of the family to use the single washroom and go to bed before we took our turn. Esther and I gathered our toiletries and walked across the dark living room to the washroom. I pushed the door open and we both stopped. Just go in, Esther whispered and gave me a nudge. We shuffled in and closed the door behind us. So, no shower, I said. That's fine. We're only here for a week. Maybe it's in a different room, she said. The washroom walls were concrete with a small barred window and barely enough room for the toilet and sink. Esther brushed her teeth while I washed my face despite the dripping water pressure. I looked at the palm-sized mirror above the sink as I tried my best to wipe away the grime of travel. Next to the toilet was a bucket of water to assist in flushing. The next morning, Umi poured milky coffee out of a thermos into frosted plastic cups and drizzled honey on thick Moroccan bread called Hobbs. Pronounced with a throaty noise, but to our ear, it sounded like Hobbs. Esther tried to ask about a shower. She fumbled in Arabic and mimed washing her underarms before Amira understood. Ah, hammam, Amira said, nodding. We sighed and nodded back. We knew the word for bathhouse. When? Esther tapped her wrist. 4 day, Amira said and held up 5 fingers. We take you. Monday through Friday, we lost ourselves in the twisting Medina. Fez is one of many walled cities in Morocco, buildings stacked on top of each other and endlessly narrowing roads twisting toward the center. Esther and I climbed winding staircases to spectacular views. We drank the sweetest mint tea at every opportunity and visited ancient buildings turned into museums with green and blue mosaic floors. Arched entryways, domed rooms, and intricately painted Moorish doors rounded every corner. We were surprised to make it home at all, but we did each evening before dark and never by the same route. By the time Saturday arrived, my hair was wet with grease and sweat, and my underarms were caked with deodorant. My feet were a different color than the rest of my body, and I couldn't tell what smelled worse, me or my clothes. I've never been more grateful for a headscarf in my life, Esther said. It's one thing to go without washing my hair for a week, but the rest of me is another story. I don't remember what I look like naked, I said. Sometimes I was grateful our host family didn't always understand us. Amira handed each of us a set of folded flannel pajamas, a flimsy brush with no handle, 2 sandcastle buckets, and something green and squishy like mud wrapped in plastic, and she called it savon. All 4 of us proceeded to walk 3 blocks to the bathhouse. an ancient gray stone building with 2 archways but no doors. We walked into the blackness of the women's archway and down a wide stone stairwell. Just like the Count of Monte Cristo, Esther whispered. One can only dream, I said. The 4 of us rounded the corner to a change room. There was a thick pillar in the middle with wooden benches along the sides. Esther and I both wore bathing suits underneath our clothes since we had no idea what was appropriate. Amira and her mother stripped down to nothing, so we followed suit. They put the green squishy savon into their hair and their hairbrushes into their buckets and motioned for us to follow. The main bathhouse was a large, dimly lit square room, not so steamy we couldn't see 2 covered stone troughs built into the wall across the room. Mothers laughed while groups of girls chatted, the sounds reminding me of a public pool back home. Most of the women were sitting on upside-down buckets with another filled with soapy water in front of them. Umi talked with a Moroccan woman and pointed to us. She came back and said something to Amira. Amira looked at us and made a pinching motion with her hands. Massage, she said happily. The Moroccan woman walked over to us and plopped down on the wet stone floor, indicating we should do the same. She said something in Arabic and another woman came over with 2 buckets of water. Esther and I sat next to each other, and the 2 women sat cross-legged on either side of us. They pointed to our buckets, so we handed them over. And swirled it around until the water became sudsy. We later learned that this was an olive oil soap widely used throughout Morocco. Each took a loofah, dipped it in the bucket, and began scrubbing our legs. Esther and I had to stifle our laughter despite being rubbed raw. I was almost in tears. Pain and hilarity, a lethal combination. The woman slid me around on the soapy stone floor so she could get my back. She held my arms up one at a time and scrubbed my prickly underarms. Our bodies were unaccustomed to going a week without a shower. Dead skin rolled off my body in worm-like strands. She picked up one 4 inches long and wriggled it in the air. Spaghetti, she shouted. The room roared with laughter. Esther and I could do nothing but laugh along with them. Moroccan massage was tear-inducing, bizarre, unlike anything we could have imagined. Last was our hair. The woman sat behind us and brushed the olive oil soap through it, rinsed it with fresh water dumped over our heads 3 times. We met up with Amira and her mother in the change room and put on the flannel pajamas, wrapped our wet hair in scarves, and walked outside under a moon high in the night sky. Amira and her mother talked softly and walked ahead of us. The cool air felt fresh in my lungs. I'm never going a week without a shower again, Esther said. Maybe we had to get that dirty to get that clean, I said. She put one arm around me and dangled her other hand in front. Spaghetti.
Lovely. It's a nice story.
Thanks.
So, thank you very much for reading. Do you have any other projects on the go at the moment?
Nothing, I guess, too specific. I'm doing NaNoWriMo, the National Fiction Reading Month. So I have not quite met my 1,000 word goal every day, but I'm getting close. Trying to catch up this weekend, hopefully, and over reading week.
Right. Aside from this particular thing, when you do writing on your own, under your own terms, do you ever show it to anybody before it's complete, or is there a point that it has to get to before you let anyone see it?
I usually let my husband read the messiest draft to kind of make sure that it actually makes sense and it's like kind of readable. And then, yeah, sometimes I'll send things to my mom. She usually just says, it's great, and doesn't give feedback. So it depends on what mood I'm in, what I need. But yeah, I have a few friends that I'll send things to kind of get, yeah, to get a little bit more feedback. And I usually tell them, like, don't give me anything positive. Like, I have enough people close to me who are like, it's great, send it in. So yeah.
What kind of advice would you give to up-and-coming writers, or even writers who've been doing it for a long time?
I mean, I feel like it's like the obvious kind of piece, but like starting is the hardest thing. Like getting words on the page is the hardest. It is not easy. So just to begin, like even if you feel like you're not starting at the beginning, just begin, and you can always write the beginning later. And always remember that first draft is always going to be the messiest. It's never going to make total sense. Like there's no way that everything in your head is ever going to like concisely be put on paper. Anything we write, like even text, we edit. So
Well, thank you very much for your time and your words and your story. And thank you for the viewers at home for watching the Portal Portfolio series. Portal is a literary magazine published by the students in Vancouver Island University's Creative Writing and Journalism Department in the territories of the Snuneymuxw, the Quw'utsun, and the Tla'amin First Nations. For more information about Portal and our portfolio series, please visit portalmagazine.ca. Thank you very much.
thank you.